All right. Our speakers today are Ennis Davis, AICP, and Alex Benmekel from Discover Opelika. My name is Daphne Kirkpatrick. I am the Business and Communications Manager at the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. Ennis, would you like to say a bit about yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Ennis Davis. I am the Vice President for the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. I'm also the Chair of the 11 to Save Committee, and I'm an urban planner with about 23 years of experience that's based out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Thank you, Ennis. Alex?
Good morning, everyone. Alex Benmekel here, Opelika resident, homeowner, citizen preservationist, and founder of the Opelika Preservation Association here in Miami-Dade County. I'm specialized and certified in public relations practice, and I worked for several years in entertainment, came back to Florida and found my home of Opelika and my passion, resurgence of passion related to historic preservation, and a proud supporter of the Florida Trust.
Thank you, Alex. We appreciate your support. You're doing great things in Opelika. Okay, for anyone that may not be familiar with the Florida Trust, I wanted to give a very short introduction. We were founded in 1978 to save visible historic treasures like the historic Florida Capitol, which was endangered. That was a success story, and since then we have worked to preserve and share inclusively our architectural, archaeological, historical, and cultural heritage. We focus in 4 areas: advocacy, connecting, education, and stewardship. And the Lunch and Learn programs fall under our education pillar. It's one of the ways we try to connect with preservationists around Florida and share information and resources. Ennis, would you like to go ahead and talk about the 11 to Save program?
Sure, most certainly. So the 11 to Save program is a special program that's operated by the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. And it is really intended to do a few things to empower local preservationists, but also designed to advocate for historic sites across the state and increase public awareness in those sites, the cultural heritage and the history. This program generally takes in nominations that are submitted from the public around the state. And then during the summer, we narrow down the list of applications and submissions to 11 selected sites. And that process is overtaken by the 11 Save Committee, which is a mixture of Florida Trust board members as well as volunteers from the preservation space across the state. And then at our annual Preservation on Main Street conference, which is held in July, we make that official announcement. So nominations are open year round, and our deadline is coming up for the 2025 list fairly soon. Our deadline will be May the 15th. So there's 3 areas I want to focus on briefly around the 11 to Save program. The first is going to be the process of nominating a historic site. Then we'll get down into what's next once that site is nominated. And then we'll close with a program that we've recently launched over the last 2 years, which is 11 to Save Fund, which is a tangible way of assisting 11 to Save sites. So let's go to the next slide. So starting off with the nominating process, there are a number of resources that are eligible to be nominated. It really is any type of historic or archaeological resource across the state. And so examples range from everything from homes and schools all the way down to historic neighborhoods or cemeteries. And in some cases, we've actually had 11 to save sites that were even boats. So some examples here of residential structures are shown here on the slide, such as the Pink House in Putnam County or the Spring House in Leon County, which both of those were designated as 11 to save sites over the last decade or so. And even the church structures, which is really multiple residential sites that were added to the list in 2008. Other examples include a variety of schools from across the state. Some such as the Lake Hall School, which dates back to the late 19th, early 20th century, all the way up to Plant City High School, which is an early 20th century structure that was designated in 2022. And then some schools are also not just local public schools or private schools, but also facilities of higher education, such as Rollins College, outside of Winter Park in Orange County. Over the years, we had a number of nominations for various religious structures. And here are a few shown here from Mount Olive AME Church in the historic Eastside community of Jacksonville, Lincolnville's Trinity Independent Methodist Church, which is in St. Augustine, and the Black Bottom House of Prayer, which is in the Paramore neighborhood in Orlando. So again,
I'm sorry, the slides went forward a lot. I'm not sure how this happened, getting us back to the right
that's no
page.
problem.
Here we are, okay.
All right. So some additional examples, and you can go to the next slide, include hotels, Hotel Putnam, Hotel James, which is in downtown Palaca. The Duville Beach Resort was on the 2019 11 to Save list down in Miami Beach, Florida. And then the Bellevue Biltmore, just south of Clearwater, was designated as 11 to Save site in 2014. Some examples of public and commercial buildings include the Opelika City Hall, which is a part of the 2021 list, which I believe is in the process of being rehabilitated now. The federal courthouse in Broward County, downtown Fort Lauderdale in 2018. Then One North Orange, which is in downtown Orlando, was a part of the 2015 11 to Save. Not all sites are buildings, as mentioned earlier. There have been a number of historic cemeteries on previous 11 to Save lists that have been nominated or submitted by different individuals across the state and communities. They include the Bethlehem Methodist Episcopal Cemetery just outside of Gainesville, which lots of restoration work has taken place since that particular time in 2019. And then there was a statewide nomination for historic African-American cemeteries in 2021. And that picture that you see there is actually the Lincoln Memorial Park down in Brownsville, which is a community just outside of Miami and Miami-Dade County. And then Florida is a very rapidly growing state. And at times we have several historic neighborhoods and districts that are in danger. Two shown here, the Milton Historic District in Santa Rosa County was on the 2017 11 to Save list. And it was added because of damage from, I believe it was Hurricane Michael. I might get my hurricanes wrong. And then up in Jacksonville, Florida, the La Villa neighborhood is a historic African American community, really related to the Chitlin Circuit, civil rights, really with a great migration, which changed the development pattern of the country. It's really birthed out of La Villa back during World War One. But this is a historic district. Well, not really a historic district, soon to be, but at the time it was a neighborhood that had undergone significant urban renewal. But since that designation in 2022, the community has been able to cobble together, take that awareness, cobble together local private funding to implement a historic survey of the buildings and structures that remain. And then they've secured enough money to pursue a national national register historic district designation to officially be listed. And so that was gonna be pretty interesting, just because they are pursuing a listing for an area where there's been significant demolition via urban renewal, and trying to still have those sites designated. So a lot of what they've been able to accomplish has been benefited from the public awareness this program has brought. Next slide. And then to close out the examples, not all sites have been, livable structures. Noah's Ark, which was 11 to Save grant fund recipient 2 years ago, was designated as 11 to Save site in 2022. And it's a steamship or steamboat that used to be in operation along the St. Johns River, and it's currently in Putnam County or downtown Palatka at this point in dry dock. Tinker Field is historic baseball field in Orlando, and that was on the list in 2014. And then even in 2015, we had a lighthouse down in Pinellas County. The Sand Key Lighthouse was included as a part of the program. So after showing those examples, I wanted to spend a few time just share the general selection criteria of what the committee considers in terms of narrowing down the nominations for inclusion into a list. As a base, historic significance in terms of age is very important. So we're always interested in sites that are, above the age of 40 years old or more. Here are two examples: the Carver High School in Palm Beach and the Rochelle Church in Lafayette County. Another important piece of criteria that we look to narrow down the list is the threat. So, when you say a building over the age of 40 or 50 years old, we've been around a long time. Florida has a number of sites that are well and above that age. But we also want to look at and identify the sites that are most endangered, which is very critical in trying to preserve and save when their survival is really limited to a ticking time clock. So, and not just buildings, it also goes for archaeological sites. There's been cases where there have been proposed real estate developments that could have likely endangered or erased archaeological sites. So how big is the threat? That's a big example. And the Jackson Ruin House in downtown Tampa is a great example of that. Here is a good example. You can see the picture right there. It is got some serious threats and endangerment. So it was added to the list in 2017, and we're still trying to work and help that community get this thing rehabilitated before it falls down. Another important piece of selection criteria is the significance of that structure or site to the surrounding community. Sometimes it's not always about the architectural character or craftsmanship. Sometimes sites are significant to communities for a number of reasons. So when you're filling out that making that nomination, we really do look at the narratives and dig into just the significance of these sites on their surrounding cities, neighborhoods, and counties as well. And then in recent years, I know since I've joined the trust and chaired this community, we've increasingly worked to make sure that we're representing all of Florida's history. And Florida is home to a number of historically mine's been blank on me, but historically excluded communities that always don't show up in schools or history books or in the traditional capacity of how preservation has been reviewed. So when those sites do pop up, we do also pay attention to them. Old Mount Carmel Baptist Church, which is located in the Fifth Avenue, Pleasant Street neighborhood of Gainesville, is a good example of that. It's a simple Gothic structure, so nothing crazy about the architectural style, but when you dig into its history and what it meant for that Fifth Avenue community and just the civil rights movement within the Gainesville area, uh, it really it really stood out as a site that was of significance to the evolution and change of Gainesville's African American community.
I think our slides moved forward again.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
All right, go to the next one. And then another big focus we really try to work with is we want to make sure the state has equal representation in terms of endangered sites. So we're always looking for nominations from across the state, rural areas, urban areas. You never want to have a situation where you've got one major city that takes up all the focus when we're representing the entire state. So uh, in 2023, this is just the list of counties that those various sites came from. But what we'll be looking for over the next month as well is we want to make sure we got representation, not just from these counties, but counties that you don't see on the list as well. So for the second part, I want to talk about what's next after that nomination is submitted by that May 15th deadline. Next slide. There you go. Actually, you can go, let's see. Did you skip a slide?
I think it skipped slides again, yes.
All right.
I'm not sure how that's happening. I'm sorry, everyone.
There's no problem.
Technological problems. Okay.
All right. So once the nomination deadline passes in May 15th, the 11 to Save committee comes together and it meets twice over the next month. The first meeting is held to really get a high level overview for committee members of every nomination that has been submitted for consideration. Committee members then have a discussion during that meeting. That meeting normally lasts about an hour or two. And then each committee member then takes about 2 weeks to do individual additional research on their own time around each of these sites. In addition, during those 2 weeks, as chair, I normally prepare a ranking or a doodle poll for each individual committee member to rank the sites according to what they believe as an individual or the should be the higher priorities for the nominations that are submitted. That automatically tallies up general order of for the nominations. And then what we do, we follow back up with a second meeting in June. And then at a second meeting, we reveal those results. Normally, when you go through this process, there are likely going to be up to 5 to 8 sites that may be consistent across the board and just kind of rate up to the top much higher. So we spend the rest of the focus in that second meeting around sites that we need to iron out in the bottom half of the list. And so during those 2 weeks, sometimes there's information that is revealed that we may not have knew from the initial nomination applications. Sometimes during those 2 weeks, we'll actually reach back out to nominators, and we'll try to solicit additional information just in case there's something that we didn't understand or we needed additional clarification in those nomination forms. So by July the 1st, we generally have that list already identified. Staff then reaches back out to the nominators and lets them know that their property has been selected for the upcoming list. However, we want those nominators to kind of keep that information to themselves, keep it as a secret, because that official nomination, the public nomination, is intended to be announced the first day of the Preservation of Main Street Conference, which this year would be July the 10th. And that reception where that announcement takes place is free and open to the public. And the Preservation on Main Street Conference this year will be in Tallahassee. So following the conference and following the announcement of the 2024 11 to Save list, I think I might have said 2025 earlier, but the 2024 11 to Save list, we then assign an ambassador from the trust, or sometimes an ambassador who could be a nominator. But we assign an ambassador to each of the individual sites. The point or purpose of that ambassador is to be a point person between the Florida Trust and the nominator. And once that ambassador starts working, what we're really trying to accomplish there is continued education and learning about the site. For the trust perspective, we're trying to understand the history and challenges associated with those sites. And then we're also trying to work to identify, recommend, and help and provide assistance with site-specific resources and solutions. So, every site that's nominated that ends up on the list generally has a different challenge. While preservation may be or endangerment may be the overall theme, sometimes challenges can be funding, sometimes challenges can be political, sometimes challenges can come down to ownership and organization, and in some cases, sometimes it's simply about you could have a nominator in a group that is fairly organized, but they could really benefit from the additional public awareness raised through the program. And before I go to slide this the 11 to Save grant program, another form that I'll just throw in terms of raising the public awareness is we do collaborate with NPR in the Florida Historic Society and Public Radio to highlight each of these sites over the course of the year on the radio, just as another form of raising awareness. These sites are also, we collaborate with a number of other organizations, nonprofits within the preservation planning a space to also share this information as well. So really, this is a great opportunity, I think, for a free opportunity for individuals, groups, looking to preserve their sites by raising public awareness that they may not have access to alone. And then the third part I want to talk about briefly is 11 to Save Grant Fund Program. This was, you can go to the next slide. This grant program was established 2 years ago, and it really came out of a need of, it was great for us we saw benefits with the 11 to Save program and raising the public awareness. But then we also saw a real need to provide some tangible assistance to sites that have been designated as a part of this 11 to Save program. So not just the list of sites coming up this year or when we launched this in 2022, but really every site that had been previously designated 11 to Save as 11 to Save program became eligible. But the whole point of this is we're looking and we're working to continue to raise an amount of funding to have a grant that is specifically set up to provide financial assistance to the 11 to Save program and sites that are a part of it. So we've had two cycles to date. With the grant, we started off small and we're continuing to grow that number. But we've awarded up to $12,500 to date that have assisted 3 historic resources. And what that money has been used for, and with those resources have been everything from creating museum exhibits to historic documentation to our most recent applicant, which was to provide assistance on the restoration of their roof. And I will say, the first year we took what we had in that fund at that point and we split it up and gave it to 2 sites. This year we had a little more in funding that we had grown, but we made the committee made a decision to provide bigger funding assistance to a single site and then instead of trying to split funds up equally, leave some funds within the program to allow it to continue to grow. We want the fund to get bigger. So this upcoming year, the 11 to Save grant will hopefully be able to provide a recipient a much larger amount of grant funds than what we've done in previous years. Next slide. So who is eligible? Basically, eligible property would have to already be designated as an 11 to Save site, either as an 11 to Save site with this upcoming list or 11 to Save site within the past. Those sites or those applicants should also need to be either nonprofit organizations, public agencies, colleges, or school districts. So individuals and for-profit organizations are not eligible to apply for the fund. And for those of you who may already have sites, you can actually reach out to your selected 11 to Save ambassador for additional resources, just in case you may not be eligible. But even if you are eligible, I will still say reach out to your ambassador. And if you don't know who your ambassador is, you reach out to me or Daphne or Melissa, and we'll provide you with the right guidance and information to move forward. Next slide. So there are a few important dates that are going to be coming up for the 11 to Save program. Our submission process, that window is going to open in October. So it's going to happen after the conference. And then you're going to have about a month window before that application process to submit closes in November. And then what we try to do is we try to select award recipient and announce that as a part of Giving Tuesday in late November. And then we try to work quickly to release those funds to the recipients in December. So this year it'd be December 2024. And as I mentioned, we are continuing to work to try to grow this fund to make it just that much more tangible to these sites that are endangered, that we love and want to preserve, for tell our history, and to share Florida story and rich cultural heritage with future generations. So Trust is always accepting donations. So definitely, if this is a program that you support, or thinking about, please become an 11 to Save supporter. And if you make a donation, Melissa's got a picture here, Daphne's got a picture here, you get a lovely Florida Trust 11 to Save supporter pin. But also we do have 11 to Save note cards, which are really artistic sketches of previous 11 to Save sites. So you can also purchase an 11 to Save note card set, and those proceeds go directly into the 11 to Save grant fund. So at this time, I know I've talked a lot. I said I was going to be done by 12. It's 12:04. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex, where you can actually hear this process from a nominator's perspective.
Thank you, Ennis. And I'll be brief because, as Ennis kind of alluded to, there's, as a result of getting nominated and being afforded that important status to bring awareness to a specific site that you've brought forth, the rest ensues related to the politicking, the funding, the ownership of the property, et cetera. So in the example of what's happened here in Opa-locka in Miami-Dade County, the last remaining vacant and kind of derelict structure that happens to be in our historic core of our business district is an Egyptian revival style former bank building, a bank that was never fully realized and has long been a house of worship, specifically a First Baptist congregation. Baptist Church owns it today. So they came into possession of this property back in 2006, and at its current status and condition, it was not great. There were some compromised roof elements that needed to be addressed that hadn't been. There was no active electrical system, plumbing. Pretty much the building had been disengaged from any a grid of any sort. And the owners have really struggled to figure out what to do with the structure. So then here I come into Opa-locka 2.5 years ago. I purchased a historic home here as part of the Arabian Nights identity of our city. And I was just completely entranced by all of the buildings that we had to offer, most notably our historic City Hall Municipal Building, which, as Ennis had mentioned, was a 2021 11 to Save and is currently being restored and will be done very soon. But then I quickly noticed that there was this gem of a structure just kind of perched offset from our Main Street area, and that was this Egyptian temple. Once I learned what complications had come about in trying to bridge connections between owner and city in hopes that there might be a funding opportunity, specifically with our community redevelopment agency, CRA. And again, many attempts over several years to try to bridge connections and try to bring awareness and education about the significance of this, not just local registered site, but also a national Register of Historic Place. I realized that I needed a little bit more credibility pegged to the narrative of the building itself, and to kind of give a sense of urgency of the why. Why should we restore this? And what other entity could certainly put their name to it that gives it that level of importance that will help the community and the owner once again better understand and be reminded of why it's important to save and to bring back to life. And so that's when I learned about the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation and the 11 to Save campaign. Under the umbrella of my organization, the Opa-locka Preservation Association, aka Discover Opa-locka. I nominated the site. In this particular example, I did make the owners of the property, the congregation, aware that that's something that I was going to be doing. They were very interested to know more about what that was going to look like. But of course, as a preliminary submission, I didn't delve into too much detail as it relates to what could come of it beyond just the importance of doing it. And at the same time, and of course, with the importance of strategic social media awareness and campaign rollouts, we actually got support from the Coral Gables Historical Society, I believe it's called, the group down there. They took sight of the fact that we had submitted it and we were advocating for it within our community, and they too, I believe, put their support to it, or at least vocalized it to the trust. And then came last summer where Ennis announced that this was part at Preservation on Main Street in Ocala, that this site was one of the 11 to save, which I was really, really pleased to see that it got the attention of the committee and it was worthy of this designation. And so then I went back to the owners of the property and they were just absolutely elated. It gave them a sense of hope that this might be going in the direction that it should be in regards to continuously advocating and campaigning for funding for it. And most importantly, to go back to our CRA and our city and say, just so you know, the site that I've been talking ad nauseum about has now been afforded this important status. And even at the state level, there's awareness of its existence and overall support to try to get it back online. And as a result of the posting that Daphne and the team have done at the Florida Trust to acknowledge it, part of their cadence of giving time and space to each site with various social media posts that go out over the course of several weeks. Their post about the Egyptian bank in particular got the attention of a preservation focused minded contractor up in Broward County who reached out to me offering to help in any way that he can. And that has resulted where we're at present day in several inspections, walkthroughs, and now some initial estimates thanks to him and that connection to an awareness of this campaign. At least provided some insights and some numbers as to what estimates are going to look like to secure and contain the building, starting with the roof line and of course with all the openings of the doors and windows that largely have been blown out or just have fallen out over the years. So I can't speak highly enough of the trust and this program in particular to give one more seal of approval, of importance, of campaignizing, of education to bring light to a structure of historical and cultural significance, and how it has afforded an opportunity that I didn't even think could come of it, quite honestly, which is a local-ish contractor that has taken great interest in this site and is one of a like mind, right? It's always nice to be around people that care as much about historic structures and the communities that they represent as much as you do in wanting to put the time into a nomination. And so now, next steps, we hope to be able to convince the CRA that even with overextending themselves from budgetary standpoint, that in fact, the end result and the benefit to this community and the accessibility that the community will have to a building like this, especially being on a Main Street site, is critical, mission critical for an Opelika that doesn't have a lot of vacancies, let alone this being the last remaining historic site that is worthy of a transformation. And so I just want to say thank you to the team here for believing in it, to the artist that created this beautiful watercolor that again just brings a little bit more love and attention to something that sadly hasn't been looked at in many, many years. And now it's starting to come on certain people's radars. And those people are the decision makers, the game changers to really move this project forward. So I look forward to updating the trust and that network as to where this is going. Again, we've had success with our City Hall building, but that was well underway of already having funding pegged to it. This one's a little bit in limbo, but at least this nomination and this awareness campaign has elevated its status of importance. So just thank you for giving me the opportunity of sharing what's happening in our historic Opelika. And for those that are interested in doing this program, I insist on it simply because it will help to bring more, I don't want to say credibility, but that's the only word that I'm coming up with at the time being. It just gives that much more level of alignment from an important organization at the state level. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Alex, for all you're doing and for sharing your story with us. I'm very happy to hear that the program has been helpful with the project, and I wish you all the best. And please reach out if you need anything. We're always here to help. And I would also like to thank Ennis for the wonderful presentation. It was full of useful information for 11 to Save nominators. Let's move on to the Q&A, where we will address everyone's questions. Let's see, the first question was, is there signage to provide to 11 to Save projects that have been listed to recognize them as 11 to Save projects and raise awareness?
Hey, Debbie, this is Melissa. Here with you in the office in Tallahassee. And I think that's a great question, but it also mentions other materials that can be used as well. So what I thought maybe we could do for this is I could answer from the staff level. So we do a press release that we put on the statewide wire that goes out. We also do some pitching locally when we share that press release also with the community organizations for each individual resource, so they can pitch it to their local news outlets as well. And then I think the idea of signage is actually a really great idea, Ennis. Maybe we could follow up on that. I don't know that we have signage right now.
We don't have an official program, but that is something that we can certainly look into.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. And then Alex, can you think of any other signage materials that either you utilized or that maybe you think we could utilize going forward?
I mean, definitely a temporary marker that, denotes its significance, and the branding of 11 to Save, I think, would be really important. I mean, in our case, the bank building had at one point a historic marker that had since been stolen. And so now people don't even know it's a historic site. So if you're in that kind of situation, or you're in the process of going forward with a new designation or a new marker install, I think this would be a really nice refresh on, some kind of a polycarbon or that type of material that can easily be mounted or put in the ground in front of a building, and low cost too.
And I'll also add, and I'll probably bring this up to the committee very shortly, is in my line of work, I get a lot of groups asking for just additional information on grants and things their properties may be eligible for. So in that process of responding to that over the years, I'm starting to build up a comprehensive list of, if this is your site, this is what it is, this is history, you're likely eligible for check this box, pick this box. So I do think we could probably take some of that information, grant information, and set it up some type of way that the trust could use as material to give to different 11 to save sites. Like, here's a good 50 different types of programs that you may be eligible for based off your condition. And that may be a useful tool.
Great, thank you. That was a very interesting question. The next question is from Rick Kilby, and they're asking, what if a local government votes to demolish the nominated structures before the list comes out?
Oh, let's see. That's a good question. So that actually has happened in the past, I believe. I won't get into any site names, but that has happened in the past. We have had local governments actually call up or reach out to staff about sites that are being targeted for demolition that have popped up on the list before. In some cases, those sites still remain today, and kind of strategies have been changed. In other cases, some sites have been lost to demolition, and for those that are lost to demolition, what we try to do is try to get out and document as much of that history as possible. But I would say it's almost a case by case basis. We have to look at the results when that takes place.
I think that's a great answer, Ennis. And I think we're probably thinking about the same resource that happened
Yeah, I
recently.
was looking at you when so that stopped me from saying the name. So yeah.
We won't maybe say the name, but I do think, to your point, it was a good, in our case, the ask was to slow down the demolition and to ask for further time to document, to Ennis' point, to get in there and be able to document. And then also to consider all alternatives to demolition as well. But that's just one outcome, of course. So great question, though. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question comes from Bill Hoff, and they're asking, where does the funding for the grant come from? Individual donors, corporate donors? I can answer that. We definitely welcome corporate sponsors, but for funds, historically for the 11th Save Grant Fund have come from individual donations. So we are very, very thankful to those generous preservationists that are supporting this fund so that we can then give it to the 11th Save Fund.
Yeah, thank you, Daphne. That's exactly right. And it's a small but mighty group when we do, to Ennis's point, the 11 to Save campaign for Giving Tuesday. We have an option even for people to just be able to donate online, $11 for the 11 to Save. And it ends up adding up over time. So every little bit counts. So I see another question about funding that I thought maybe we could just dive into since we're talking about money already. Bill asked if there was grant funds, if these funds required a match. And actually they do not require a match. I think that's part of the value of the program. These are really just funds that can be pretty immediately utilized by those resources that are in need. And Ennis, maybe you could talk a little bit about the Mount Olive Church and how the fact that they didn't have to go through that match process and they didn't have to wait a year was really powerful for them.
Yeah. In many cases, there's help from different organizations, but the help almost disqualifies the applicant because the applicant can't come up with the funds to even tap into those resources. So when you look at things that way, even some grant programs can be somewhat economically discriminatory on various applicants. So when we came up with this 11 to Save grant program, the whole intent was to simplify the process to get funds out quicker and easier to communities that need them the most. Mount Olive is in historic east side of Jacksonville is a good example of that. Large historic church, but the congregation has shrunken over the years. They're actually worshiping in the basement because they can't afford to replace the roof on the structure. So while we are working with them to secure more significant funds that will be needed for the complete rehabilitation of that large structure, we were able to use this grant program as a way to address the most dilapidated portion of their roof to temporarily kind of stop water intrusion to allow them, additional time to continue to seek larger funds for a larger replacement. But that would be an example of they had an immediate need. They couldn't come up with the $2 million or whatever they needed for the complete restoration of building to address that need. But there was enough in the 11 to Save grant program to allow for a solution that could be implemented within a 30-day notice.
Thank you, Ennis. The next question is from Joseph Yates. He asks, what if the site is not in danger of being demolished? Is it still possible to be selected?
Yes. I'll use La Villa, for example, and I think that's a good one. Urban renewal took place in that neighborhood 30 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. There are a number of sites that are there that they're not in danger of being demolished tomorrow. Yet the danger is that there is no protection of those sites. So the danger is the real estate market. And if we aren't proactive with these sites, once deals and things are created, there's no going back. So then that site's lost. So I would say that's a good example of a community where there are sites that remain, yet it's more of a proactive approach to raising awareness to be able to change policies to protect those sites.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Daphne, can I just interrupt again? I'm the wild card on today's Lunch and Learn. I just wanted to mention, and maybe Ennis, you could speak to this, but it's sometimes an issue about nominators, who the nominators are, because sometimes there is connections through maybe like your employer, for instance, that would maybe you would be worried about having a negative impact if you nominated a site owned by your employer. So we do have a policy that we do not release to the public who the nominator is. And that is just kind of a best practice that we utilize. Now, the caveat to that would be if you have a nominator who is comfortable and looks forward to being a community advocate, we certainly allow them, encourage them to do that, of course, but we would not share that information publicly. So sometimes that is helpful information for people to know. I'm happy to answer any other questions about that, of course, but I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Thank you, Melissa. Lance, if a site has considerable community support but needs help to actually save the project, like planning, fundraising, execution, who can help them from the trust?
So normally I would say with 11 to Save site, always connect with your ambassador. That ambassador, they may not have all the answers, but they do have additional preservationists and staff and trust staff at their assistance. We try to use our expertise in the field to help guide those type of solutions. And every site's got a different challenge. I'll say, kind of going back to 2021, there was an African American cultural historical grant program that popped up. It was a one-time thing, funded by COVID money. It was $60 million. In that particular situation, we were able to, those 11 to Save sites that fit those requirements, we really tried to push the nominators of those sites to apply for that program. And during the selection process of that program, many of those sites were ranked favorably because they were 11 to Save sites and affiliated with the Florida Trust, and that had a real positive outcome with the review panel. I happened to be a part of the review panel. I had to recuse myself from some things, but it was noticeable that having that that connection with that, how that triggered the ranking process for many applicants in that program. So even though they didn't have the resources when they became 11 to Save sites, that's just an example of a financial opportunity that popped up. And because they were 11 to Save sites, they ranked higher than sites that were not. And many were awarded funds that ranged everywhere from, I think it was like a low, well, you could do $500,000 without a match, or if you match, you get up to $1 million. So many sites were awarded that. I
Thank
don't
you
know
so
if I answered that question, but I hope the answer should be, we try to work with the individual communities to develop solutions specifically for their issue and help guide them to those resources.
great. We have time for one more quick question, and it comes from Daniel Miller. And the question is, how many sites are typically nominated?
So every year we nominate, well, as we select 11. It ranges from year to year. I want to say last year we had, probably 20 to 23 sites that were submitted and that we worked to vet down to 11.
All right, thank you, Ennis. And I have one more minute, so I will read two wonderful comments we received. One is from Greg Snell. Just a comment. I am the president of the Ormond Yacht Club, and our clubhouse building was an 11 to save designee in 2023. Great program, and we tried to put it to good use. Thanks for all you're doing to save our Florida history. Thank you, Greg, for your kind words, and I'm so happy to hear that the program has helped the Ormond Club out. The Ormond Yacht Clubhouse, excuse me. And Roberta Correa says, the Putnam County Historical Society knows Art Restoration Committee truly appreciated the 11 Save Grant Award that allowed us to purchase all the historical ephemera and artifacts related to the art. Thank you, Roberta. Again, so happy that we were able to help you in some way. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Ennis and Alex, for giving us this wonderful presentation. Thank you, Melissa, for helping us answer the questions. This Lunch and Learn, as I mentioned before, is recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel within a week. You will also receive an email, follow-up email with important links and, of course, the link to the YouTube. Thank you again, and we hope to see you in the next Lunch and Learn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.